Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're going to try, in the time that we have, sorry about the late start, to try and discuss Pesach cleaning. Goosebumps, nightmares, I apologize. We'll try and get rid of all those. And to talk about Bedikas Chometz. Okay, if all the women thought when they heard Pesach cleaning, that's me, and the men thought Bedikas Chometz, that's me, then please help your wives out with the Pesach cleaning. Thank you. So men as well. I'll discuss exactly what is required, what's not required. It's one of these common misconceptions that people have about what needs to be Pesach cleaned and what doesn't. And therefore, I'd like to begin by discussing that today. So now, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that one has to Pesach clean or spring clean. In the Torah, it says, Tashbisu, one has to get rid of the chometz in their house. And although the Yom Tov is referred to as the Chag HaOviv, that does not mean that the Torah is asking us to spring clean. The Torah is asking us to Pesach clean. And therefore, it's very important that often what happens is that you'll end up Pesach cleaning, you'll end up spring cleaning your house, right, from top to bottom, polishing the light bulbs and cleaning the fans and cleaning the air conditioning vents and scraping the walls and polishing the ceilings and doing everything else. And by the time Yom Tov comes in, you come to Lil Seder and you feel like the shmaf that you've been using for the last few weeks, right? That's not what the Torah wants from us, right? As we discussed last Shabbos briefly, we spoke about Dorachel, Darchin Noyam, right? The Torah is sweet. The Torah doesn't demand things from us which make us feel like shmatas, make it feel burdensome. The Pesach cleaning is not meant to feel like that. We explained in Shabbos that the Oren wasn't made out of pure gold because the Torah is teaching us a lesson that Torah isn't supposed to feel like a burden or feel like something heavy. It's supposed to be geschmack. It's supposed to be meaningful. And hopefully that's what we're going to discuss tonight, how to make Pesach cleaning meaningful and to know what exactly is required for Pesach cleaning and what is not required for Pesach cleaning. I'll add that Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Levrach, used to say that he could Pesach clean, he said he could, because probably his wife did it, but he said he could Pesach clean his house in 3 hours and 2.5 would be spent in the kitchen. Right, the rest of the house would take him half an hour. So Pesach cleaning isn't supposed to be a job which should have to take weeks and months on end. On that, having said that, on the other hand, the Be'er Hativ brings from the Sefer Reikeach, who was a Rishon. The Reikeach said, the Rosh we all know says, Moha avoida hazois lochem. What is this avoida? What's this avoida that you're doing? Lochem, it's you, it's not me. Says the Reikeach, the Rosh is referring to Pesach cleaning. The Rosh is looking at all the Yidden, Kedoshim, scrubbing, cleaning, hoovering, vacuuming, everything. And the Rosh says, what are you doing all this for? What's the point of all this? So therefore, we have to be careful, although we have to realize what the obligations of Pesach cleaning and making a house chometz-free are. On the other hand, we mustn't make fun or mock, be mezalzel, people who are machmir, and they're more stringent about Pesach cleaning. That is the question of the Rosh. There's a Rav in Yerushalayim, a very big tzaddik called Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter. And Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter says that the Torah, the Gemara says that the Mishnah says a person is obligated on Pesach to feel chayav odom liris es atzmoi kehilu hu atzmoi yotzim Mitzrayim. A person is obligated to feel as if he himself left Mitzrayim on Pesach. Therefore, says Rav Shechter, you can only feel that you've left Mitzrayim on Pesach if before Pesach you feel like a slave, right? Again, in jest, right? Therefore, that's what Pesach cleaning is all about. Feel the avdus, and then when Pesach comes, we should feel the chayus. I'll add in one more thing that the Medrash says, the Posuk in Mishli, I believe, Shoyma mitzvah lo yeda dovaro. The person who's a Shoyma, the simple explanation is somebody who does mitzvah, somebody who's careful about keeping mitzvahs, lo yeda dovaro, Kodesh Baruch Hu will protect him, you won't see any evil. Says the Medrash, Shoyma mitzvah lo yeda dovaro is referring to Esther Hamalka. Why Esther Hamalka? So we know the story, Mordechai heard about the Gezerah. Esther was blissfully ignorant. She didn't know what was going on. And Mordechai sent her a message, there's been this Gezerah. Asks the Medrash, why didn't Esther hear about it? She was in the palace. Why didn't she hear about it? Says the Medrash, she was busy Pesach cleaning. It was Pesach cleaning. It's a Medrash, not my Chiddush. She was speaking, imagine Achashverosh, right, eating his Big Macs all over the place. Esther's running after him, trying to Pesach clean. And that's what she was doing. Therefore, Shayma Mitzvah, she was busy with that. She didn't hear about it. She was ignorant. She didn't hear. She was blissfully ignorant. She didn't hear about this Gezerah. So again, Pesach cleaning is definitely something which is very, very important. The Shulchan Aruch even says in Simon Tofman base that there used to be a minhag nohagu legorer haksolim, right? Maybe you can relate to this. There used to be a minhag to literally scrape the walls from chametz, right, and the chairs, and the Shulchan Aruch says on this, ein liloig al minhag. One's never allowed to laugh on a minhag and say it's a minhag shel shtus, say it's rubbish. Every minhag is holy. Every minhag has a source, and therefore one has to be careful. Although one has to not come into Yom Tov feeling like a shmata, on the other hand, one mustn't, say what you're doing all this work for. And Pesach cleaning is very important. So let's actually discuss what halacha tells us and what the obligations for Pesach cleaning are. The Ramah says in halacha, Pesach cleaning is hardly mentioned. It doesn't say anywhere you have to spend weeks or months cleaning your house for Pesach. What does it say? It says two things. The Shulchan Aruch says, the Ramah says, Kol Odom tzorich lechabit chador. A person has to clean his rooms koidem habedika before it gets checked. What's the Ramah talking about? The Ramah's talking about Yom Yud Gimel Nisan. Okay, so the Ramah started Pesach cleaning on the 13th of Nisan, clean the rooms, and on the 14th at night you do bedikas chometz. However, it does say in other places in halacha, the Mishnah Berurah brings it in a few places, that from 30 days before Pesach, one has to already be in Pesach mode, which means one has to be wary where he's bringing chometz in from Purim, from 30 days before Pesach. So we see this concept that although you might not have to be crazy, scrubbing, cleaning everything, you have to at least be alert, you have to be wary, you have to know where am I bringing the chometz into, and to be careful about it. So let's briefly discuss what's actually osir to eat on Pesach, what is osir to own on Pesach, and once we know what the gedorim are, what the concepts are, what exactly the isurim are, we can work out what our priorities should be when it comes to Pesach cleaning. So as we all know, firstly, there's an issa to eat chometz. There's an issa to eat chometz. Now, the chidush of eating chometz is that most things in the Torah, first of all, most things in the Torah, if you eat something which is osir, so you get malchus, right? It's osir min ha-Torah, chometz is liable with koros. So chometz we find is a very, very severe issa in the Torah, that it's liable with chometz. Secondly, we find that by chometz, even a drop of chometz is osir to eat. Most isurim, you're only liable if you eat a kazayas, right? A kazayas is approximately 15 grams. It's actually in the volume, but in weight it's about the size of a small matchbox. That's a kazayas, the volume of a small matchbox. Then it's osir. However, by chometz, we find even a drop of chometz is osir, various reasons given. First of all, because it's very severe, there's koros. Secondly, since it's something to eat the whole year, people may not realize and come to consume it on Pesach. Therefore, the Torah was very stringent about chometz. And just to point out, almost all our chumras, which we find on Pesach, almost all our chumras, 99% perhaps, are in relation to eating chometz. Again, in relation to eating chometz as opposed to owning chometz. Almost all our chumrah is about covering and not kashering certain dishes and etc., is that we shouldn't chas v'shalom digest even one bit of chometz on Pesach. Secondly, there's an issa of ta'aruvus chometz, a mixture of chometz. There's a chiddush by chometz that even if it's only a kazayas in a larger mixture, it's also osir on Pesach. Now, besides for eating chometz, there's an issa to own chometz. Bali ro'eh, bali motzeh. We know there's an issa to own chometz. However, one only transgresses this issa if he has a kazayas of chometz. Very, very important to note. The issa of bali ro'eh, bali motzeh, of owning chometz, is a kazayas, as we said, a matchbox size, 15 grams approximately of chometz. Now, besides for all those isurim, there is a mitzvah. There is a mitzvah to destroy all chometz in your house before Pesach. How do you destroy chometz? So the Gemara tells us there's two ways of destroying chometz. You can either be mevatel it, you can either say, I don't own this anymore, I'm being mafkir it, or you can just physically destroy it. Min ha-Torah, this is also very important to know, because all our chometz shalos which are going to have are maximum midrabon. Why? Because everyone is mafkir the chometz before Pesach. Now, why did Chazal require us to do both? So the Gemara gives various reasons, because if somebody has a nice, someone from the Kiddush Club is going to have to help me here. right, a nice 10,000 pound bottle of whiskey, right, a limited edition bottle of whiskey in his cabinet, and he says, I'm being mafkir all my chametz. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're not being mafkir that bottle of whiskey. Yeah, so therefore you have to destroy it or sell it to a guy, which is what we do. But hefker is not enough. Why isn't destroying chametz enough? Says the Gemara, in case you destroy your chametz, but you might find that you forgot, you didn't find one piece of chametz, you might come to eat on Pesach, you might come to end up owning on Pesach. Therefore, we do both. Or mevatel it, and we destroy it, or we sell it, which is not ours anymore. However, min ha-Torah, one of them is enough. Okay, so based on everything we have just said, let's actually discuss practical, relevant halachas when it comes to Pesach. So, any place where chametz is generally consumed or stored. So, any food preparation areas or any places where chametz is eaten. So, for example, dining room table, chairs, kitchen cabinets, fridges, fridge, freezer, and then even things like seforim. If you have seforim which you want to bring to the table on Pesach, and you're scared there might be crumbs which may fall into your soup, that has to be thoroughly checked. If it's seforim which you know, I'm not going to bring any books or seforim to my Pesach table, that's fine, right? However, anything which might end up getting mixed in your food, so again, any places where food gets prepared or any places where food gets eaten have to be thoroughly checked. I'll give you another example, right? I often eat lunch over my laptop, right? As in, while I'm working, which I guess, people can relate to, they're on their computers, they're on there. You have a snack, you have lunch. If that's something which you're going to use on Pesach, you're going to end up bringing that laptop, right, or that keyboard to your table, and you're going to eat your Pesach food. It's very possible that inadvertently a crumb from that laptop is going to end up in your Pesach food. And again, when it comes to digesting chametz, consuming chametz, we are extremely careful not to even have one crumb of chametz. So any place where chametz may end up coming into your food, again, your kitchen, your dining room, where you eat, these places, you have to be very, very careful to check those places and to clean those places thoroughly. Yeah.
You might not see the crumb. So
again, if it's a shaygig, it's a shaygig, but there's an issa min ha-Torah to eat even one crumb of chametz. There's not an issa to own one crumb. There, it's a kezayis. But there's an issa to eat even a crumb of chametz. Therefore, you have to be very careful not to come to inadvertently eat even one crumb of chametz. So anywhere where it may come into your food, that's where we're very careful. Now, any place where it's normal for chametz to be bought there. Okay, so let's say your living room, it's normal to eat there. If you bring food to your bedroom, wherever you bring food to your car, anywhere where you bring food, where it's normal to bring food to that, normal to bring chametz to that place, that also has to be cleaned and checked. So examples, coat pockets, jacket pockets, sofas and couches where people often bring food. Cars, right? You'll be surprised how much chametz you can find in a car seat, or you won't, right? Car seats, cars, buggies, suitcases, school bags, handbags, right? These are all places where often chametz get bought, and therefore there's a kezayis of chametz there. You're going to end up transgressing this Issal Bali Ra Bali Motze. Therefore, or at least Rabbanon, therefore one has to check all these places. Now, if anybody has children at home, specifically young children, there's almost no place in your house where your children can reach, which is not a place where chametz gets bought. Gets bought to. Therefore, any of these places, again, it's a lower level because, again, all these cases, we're not talking about if food might come into your mouth. You're looking for a kezayis of chametz. In all these places, they have to get checked. So again, if you have high up cabinets or high up wardrobes, you don't have to check there because kids can't get there. I heard a story, a Rav said a story that somebody told him he was eating Pesach at home. He turns on his mazgan, he turns on his aircon, and Cheerios start flying out. Why? It was above his kid's high chair. And his kid, little baby, little toddler, stood up in the high chair and thought it was funny to put his Cheerios in the aircon vents. He started flying out. So you've got to be careful and be aware, where do my kids ever get to? Okay. Now, so again, anywhere where kids can get to is called a place, even bathrooms, right? Kids they bring chametz in bathrooms, right? Any place like that, one has to check. An extremely common place where chametz is often found on Pesach, which people do not check thoroughly enough, is toys. right? Kids' toys and big thing of Lego or clicks, right? Very, very often you'll find a biscuit there. So these toys have to either be sold, decide what you want to use for Pesach and sell the rest and put it away, or they have to be checked. So, I mean, you can even wash them if they're washable, right? But make sure there's no chametz in these toys. Now, a place where you're not going to end up accessing on Pesach, I don't need to use this room for Pesach, I don't need to use these cupboards for Pesach, those don't have to be checked, because that you can seal off, sell to a guy, no problem. Everything you're checking is only a place that you want to be able to access on Pesach or to use on Pesach. Now, a few more important halachas when it comes to Pesach cleaning. So as we said, one only transgresses the issa of bali ra, bali motzi, of owning and possessing chometz, if there's a kazayas of chometz. Crumbs are not chometz. I repeat it, crumbs are not chometz. You don't have to check for crumbs. You don't have to look for crumbs. You don't have to get rid of crumbs. Now, however, some poskim say, and many people are stringent for this, that if there's some small pieces of chometz, which if they're in one area, they can combine to create a kazayas, that you should get rid of on Pesach. So a classic example of that is a vacuum bag. A Hoover bag, which is full of chometz, full of crumbs, even though they're small pieces of chometz, combined they have a kazayas, that you should get rid of on Pesach. Now, even according to that more strict, well, all people are mapped on it, not to have even small pieces of chometz, there's a very easy way out, right? So what if it's hard to access it in like these nooks and crannies? Very simple. Take a cleaning product, spray it. Because even these small pieces of chometz, if they're not edible, or even if they are edible, but we don't suspect that somebody's going to eat it on Pesach. It's disgusting. It's been on the floor. Nowadays, we're clean, we're hygienic, right? So again, a piece of bizarre, even if it's less than a kazayas, a kid finds it, might well put it in his mouth. But generally, even if it's a small piece of bread, which has been lying around for a few days, it's dirty, that also technically doesn't have to be thrown away. So just to repeat, we're looking for a kazayas of chometz, or we're looking for small pieces of chometz, less than a kazayas, but they're in one place which can combine to be a kazayas, where there we only have to check and be stringent if it's not matunim, if it's not dirty. If it's dirty, if we don't think that somebody might come to eat it, that is also fine. Another interesting halacha. Any chometz, even if it is edible, but it's been designated for a different use, and not as just been designated, but you've done something to that product to show that it's been for different use. The Gemara talks about literally a box of yeast, a koifer sa'or, a box of yeast, which you decide I want to use it as a store. I want to sit on it. As long as you cover it with tit, you cover it with cement, you're allowed to keep it in your house on Pesach. Even if you can get rid of the cement, you've got a whole thing of yeast there, no problem. You're allowed to keep it in your house for Pesach. Practically, you have these necklaces sometimes people have with kernels of wheat, right? And they're painted, right? Or they got varnish on them. That is something which you can keep on Pesach. Because again, it's been designated as a necklace. It's got some sort of lacquer or varnish on top of it. Therefore, it's fine. Another example. Rat poison. Very often it's chometz. However, it's been designated for rat poison and it's got usually some sort of coating or some sort of varnish on it. You can keep on Pesach. I've got a very big chiddush. Most rabbonim that I've discussed it disagree with me, but I don't understand why. So I'm going to say it. I'm not going to tell you to act based on this fact, but I don't see why there should be a problem. Play-Doh. Play-Doh, if you go on all the websites, OU, CRC, I've asked the three rabbonim in town, has to be sold, has to be got rid of. I personally don't understand why it doesn't fall into this category. Play-Doh, true, it's technically edible, but you've set it aside as a game, as a toy, and it's painted and it's got stuff on it. Therefore, it should technically fall under this category. Again, I'm not saying you should keep your Play-Doh. Yeah. Yeah, again, so that's a whole different sugya. Some people say you don't have to sell perfumes. Perfumes, there's a chumrah, there's a couple of chumras. First of all, since you asked, some people say that anything which has alcohol, which if you would distill it, you can bring it back to a state of edibility, right? It can become edible, you shouldn't keep on Pesach. That's why some people are makbid about perfumes, because technically you can, I don't know if you can, right? But it could be some perfumes you can bring it back to a state where you can eat it. And some people also say there's a chumrah called sicha kashtir. Some people say that spreading things is like drinking. So therefore, you shouldn't use those perfumes either. But again, it's a chumrah. Not everyone holds to that. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking. It could be children will come to eat it, and then that could be why the matter. They're also going to touch other things. Yeah, I hear that. Okay, I'm a couple. Very good. Shkoyach. Should come to you, Avi. Okay, fine. Another couple of things. Any chometz which has been sold to a goy, right? You can keep in your house. However, it should be designated some way. You should tape it over. You should maybe even sign this has been sold to a goy. No one should open it on Yom Tov. And that's fine. In other words, even things which are sold to a goy, you're supposed to keep it out of sight. It's not supposed to be somewhere where you can look at it.
What's enough between your kalim versus comments? That's the comments where you seal them and sold it, right? But you also have no kalim.
Again, kalim which are kalim which are clean. It's a massive chumrah to sell blius. Most forms have it in because why not? Whatever. But in other words, no guy wants to buy your blius, your things which are, as long as the kalim are clean, technically you don't have to sell it. Well, machmer, some people are machmer to sell it to a guy. So again, if you're just selling it to a guy, just tape it up with everything else, right? Have a designated cupboard, but technically you don't really have to sell as long as they're clean. As long as the kalim are clean, then you don't have to sell it to a guy very often. So again, I don't want to go too much into depth about the mechira. It's not the topic of tonight. But when we sell to a goy, we don't sell the actual utensils. We sell, the nusach is any chometz which may be in the utensils. But you're right. According to some poskim, if you would sell the actual kalim to a goy, it's like buying a new kalim now after Pesach, and you'd have to go and toivel. I had actually heard an interesting story. Someone said the Chazon Ish once by mistake stole his actual utensils as opposed to the chometz, and after Yom Tov, he took all his kalim to toivel. So one of his talmidim said, people hear this story and they think, wow, the Chazon Ish must have taken carloads, a truckload of kalim to go. He said, I saw the Chazon Ish doing it. Chazon Ish didn't have kids, but the Chazon Ish took a little bag, and a spoon, and a fork, and a knife, and a plate, maybe 5 or 6 kalim. That's all he owned. And that's why he toiled after Pesach. Okay. Now,
Should be sealed?
Sorry? Anything which you are selling should be in a. If you're sure it's clean and you're not selling it, then it doesn't have to be sealed. No, it could be anywhere. Yeah. To make sure you don't use them for Pesach.
Yeah.
They should be in a designated area that you don't mix them up with the Pesach kalim. Okay. There's another halacha which is if there's chometz underneath a pile of bricks, 3 tefachim high, where a dog cannot move those bricks and find that chometz, and therefore inadvertently end up finding the chometz burrowing, and you do not have to check that place. Therefore, another kula, right? You don't have to move fridges or freezers or couches or beds unless it's something which you move often. If you often, rearrange your furniture for some reason, then you do, right? But if it's something which I'm not going to move this the whole Pesach. I never move my fridge. At the edge of the fridge, maybe you should because it can maybe roll out. But if it's like deep, you have to start moving the whole fridge and checking behind your radiators, checking underneath the beds. If it's something which you never move on Pesach, that's like a gal sha'avonim. It's like a heap of stones which you don't have to check underneath for chometz. Okay.
For sure. Like if it's a couch that fits it's quite heavy.
Again, technically, even if even if you're 100% sure that there's chometz there, you don't have to. However, again, if you know for sure there's a piece of bread there, maybe you should take it out, just in case it does get moved, right? But halachically, technically speaking, you don't. Now, let me just finish off this segment of the shir by saying, the Be'er Hativ brings from the Zohar. The Zohar says, somebody who's careful from even digesting, now Rizal, says, someone who's careful from even digesting 1 crumb of chometz on Pesach, muftach loy, this is our Rizal, he is guaranteed not to inadvertently sin the entire year. That's a pretty good haftacha, right? Somebody who's careful on Pesach, again, we know that chometz represents Yetzer Hara, it represents our bloated selves, our ego. It represents things that we don't really need in life. Gaiva, whatever it is, as far as we'll talk about how chometz is a representation of the Yetzer Hara. And therefore, just to finish off this segment by saying that something which we're very, very careful, especially not to even digest 1 crumb. And we have this haftach. I'll just actually finish off with a vot from the Berditchever Rebbe. The Rebbe Yitzchak Berditchever used to say, a Rosh Hashanah, we know we blow the tashat, the tashrat, and the tarat. So teruah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, shvarim, trua, tekiah, and tekiah, trua. Yeah, so 3 sets. Now it's sometimes referred to as kashrak. Kashrak as in the kuf for tekiah, the shiur for shvarim, the reish for trua, and halacha it's often referred to as kashrak. Kiyan, kuf, shiur, reish, kuf. Said the Berditchever Rebbe. He says when you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, one of the holiest times of year, you create so many malachim. Says the Berditchever Rebbe, the same way that you're creating malachim when you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, so too when you Pesach clean by Pesach. He says kashrak stands for kuf, stands for kasherun, the kashio kalim. He says shiur stands for sharon, to sweep. Reish stands for raibun, to rub, and kuf stands for kratzen, for scratch. He says a woman that Pesach cleans, or a man, whoever it is, or Pesach cleans before Pesach is creating malachim. It's a holy work. We have to realize that what we have to do and what we don't have to do, but whatever we are doing, we should realize that we're doing meleches shamayim, and it creates malachim. There's a joke about how a woman once turned to her husband and said, "I don't understand. Don't you know the Berditchever Rebbe says that you create malachim like blowing the shofar? Why aren't you helping me Pesach clean?" It's very simple. You're the Baal Tekiah. I'm just the makri. Anyway, okay. Let's move on to Bedikas Chometz. Okay, the time to do the Bedika should be straight after nightfall or after Mariv. If you usually daven Mariv first, you could do Mariv and then do Bedikas Chometz. However, nothing else should be done before Bedikas Chometz. You shouldn't have a meal. You shouldn't even start a meal within half an hour before Bedikas Chometz, before nightfall. And nothing else, no other work should be done before you do Bedikas Chometz. Bedikas Chometz has to be at night. And the reason is because one has to use a candle to check all the nooks and crevices and that can't be done in daylight, right? It's not clear, and therefore we go at night where the candle burns brighter, and we check all the corners of a house to see if there is chometz there. Now, people often make the mistake. Well, if you can't search for chometz during daytime, therefore you have to turn all the lights off in the room when you do Bedikas Chometz. Say the poskim, no, you don't have to turn the lights off. Fluorescent lights not a problem. You can keep the lights on. You probably should keep the lights on. It'll be easier for you to do the Bedikas Chometz, and you should go around with a candle and check all the corners of the room with a candle. Now, who should check for Bedikas Chometz? It's supposed to be the Bal Habayis, the owner of the house. If there are people, if you have older children helping you to do your Bedikas Chometz, they should stand with you when you're doing the bracha. They should be yotzi the bracha with you, and then they can go and check whatever room you've designated them to check for Chometz. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is an interesting thing. He says if you have a married child by you for Pesach, and this married child is by you for a couple of weeks, and he's going to be in his room, and no one is going to walk into this room besides for this couple. You're not going to walk in unannounced into the couple's room. Says Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, it says if this bedroom now belongs to them, and they should make their own bracha and check that bedroom, because if it's their bedroom now, other players can disagree, and therefore what I would advise you to do, if you have, let's say, a married couple staying by you, they should give you a few pounds and officially rent the rooms. Now it's definitely their room, and they should do Bedikas Chometz on that room. Now, what do we use for Bedikas Chometz? So now, do Bedikas Chometz after your children are asleep, your young children, as long as you don't delay it, and therefore they don't see that you're not using their spoon and the feather that they brought back from kindergarten, right? You don't actually have to use a spoon and feather, contrary to what they teach in playgroup and kindergarten. In the Gemara's days, they used to use that because that's how they used to keep, right? You don't have to use your kid's feather or a spoon. What about a candle? This is an interesting one. What about a candle? No, we just explained that you use a candle because it's hard to check in some places with daylight. You use a candle to check all the corners of the room, the places where it's hard to find in daylight. Now, there's this crazy new invention called a torch, right? You take a torch, turn on your phone torch. It's much brighter than a candle. It's much more safe than a candle. You're not scared you're going to set your house on fire. So therefore, the chayri should be able to use a torch, and not a candle. And many poskim permit using a torch, no problem. Some say no. Chazal said a candle, traditional, use a candle. What I would advise is start Bedikas Chometz with a candle, make a bracha with a candle, and after a bit of time, straight away even, start your Bedika with a candle, and then you can blow your candle out and carry on using your phone torch to do Bedikas Chometz. Sorry? It's like having machine nuts, exactly. If you have machine nuts, you can use a torch, yeah. Yeah, if you have hand nuts, you have to use a feather and a spoon. Okay. Fine. What about a hefser? Right? So the halacha is that once you made your bracha of albir or chametz, you're not supposed to be mafsik anything that hasn't got to do with the bedika. So you're allowed to ask your wife, has this been cleaned and what's going on? Anything to do with bedika's chametz you can speak about, but otherwise you shouldn't talk about other things until you've finished your bedikas chametz. Now, where does one have to check? So as we discussed, anywhere where chametz never gets to, bathrooms, if you haven't got very little kids at home, right? Anywhere like that, high up cabinets, chametz never gets there. You don't have to do bedikas chametz in those places. Now, one has to do bedikas chametz not just at home, but any place where a person owns. Therefore, bedikas chametz has to be done in your office. It has to be done in your car. It has to be done in a shed, in shul, your drawer in shul. Again, some people, usually every shul has a shliach that does bedikas chametz for everyone. But you have to make sure there's no chametz there. A garden, generally, we say you don't have to do bedikas chametz because we can rely that birds are going to eat the chametz, unless you know that if there was a large amount of chametz consumed that day in the garden, which actually is sometimes the case. Just for Pesach, there was let's say on the deck, there was a pizza party there that day, then you should go out and check there to see if there's chametz, because it's not necessarily all going to get eaten when Pesach comes in. Yeah. As we're about to discuss, very good. Awesome. So the problem is like as follows. Yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah, so we're going to talk about that now. In the olden days, they say the Vilna Gaon spent the entire night doing bedikas chametz. The Vilna Gaon lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Vilna. Okay? Not a very big house. And he spent the entire night doing bedikas chametz. Bedikas chametz is not symbolic. It's not supposed to be, I've got on a room, yeah, it looks okay, walk out. Bedikas chametz is the chiyuv of tashbiso. That's the main chiyuv. Check to see if you have any chametz. Make sure there's no chametz. The problem is that Baruch Hashem, it's not a problem. We live in bigger houses than we used to live. How do you manage to do bedikas chametz and your office and your car, etc., all in one night? Therefore, I'm going to recommend the following eitzah. I heard this from my Rabbi to do as follows. You can do bedikas chametz from 30 days before Pesach. You only make a bracha the night before, right? Or this year, 2 nights before. But generally, you can do bedikas chametz from 30 days before Pesach. Therefore, and by the way, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a bit more about that later. But somebody who goes away for Pesach within 30 days of Pesach also has to do bedikas chametz. We're going to see. We're going to talk about what he should do. Now, therefore, it's totally mutter and even advisable for someone not to leave all his bedikas chametz for the last night. What you should do is like this: your wife tells you, "This room, our bedroom, the attic, whatever it is, I've cleaned it out. It's done." Within 30 days of Pesach, go there at night, not at daytime. Go there at night with a candle, without a bracha, do bedikas chametz, but make sure no chametz is brought into that room. With young kids, that might not be possible, but you have to really make sure that no chametz is brought into that room. And therefore, on Leil Yudana, the night of bedikas chametz, you don't actually have to go and do bedikas chametz on that room. Okay, however, I will add that some rooms at least should be kept for the last night, because obviously you should be able to do bedikas chametz with a bracha. Now, we all know about the famous 10 pieces of bread, right? So one of the highlights of Pesach, you get your kids, 10 pieces of bread, hide it all over the house, you can't find them, panic, right? Every household's had that at one point. So strictly speaking, you don't have to hide 10 pieces of bread. What's the reason why we hide 10 pieces of bread? Because we're scared you're not going to find any chametz, and it's going to end up being a bracha levatola. Therefore, make sure there is some chametz there, which, by the way, I'm just going to add in this question, right? It's quite hard to understand because we discussed before, less than a kazayis, there's no issa of bali roa, bali motzi. And halacha says it should be less than a kazayis because in case you don't find one piece, you shouldn't end up transgressing the issa of bali roa, bali motzi. But here I've catch 22 because you're supposed to make sure no piece is bigger than a kazayis, but the whole reason why you're hiding 10 pieces of bread is to be mekayim tashbisa. There is no mitzvah of tashbisa on that amount. So again, it's catch 22. I haven't heard like a good answer. Like what? So some place can actually say one of those 10 pieces should be bigger than a kazai. So Moshe says one of those 10 pieces, but make sure not to lose that piece. Yeah. No. So that's what the Minchas Chinuch says. The Minchas Chinuch says, technically speaking, you don't have to do these 10 pieces of bread. Why? Because the mitzvah is to look for chametz. Very good. That's what the Mishnah brought. Some people are careful. Some people say that you're supposed to actually go and burn chametz. Therefore, that's the minhag. But not everyone does that. Again, it's a minhag. It could actually be nowadays. where our houses are so clean before Pesach, it's almost like guaranteed, not definitely, but it's very, very often the case that you indeed don't find any chametz. Maybe nowadays there'll be more of a reason to hide these 10 pieces of bread. Yes, the Minchas Chinuch says, even if you're saying I'll be... It's not necessarily, we're going to discuss that in a second, not necessarily. Okay, we're going to discuss that, about what the mitzvah of tashbisu actually is. No, you're making a bracha of albir chametz, but the bracha means I'm looking for chametz to burn if there is chametz. We're going to discuss in a second whether there is an active mitzvah to burn chametz before Pesach. Okay. So again, if you have this minhag to hide 10 pieces of bread, ashrecha, carry on doing this minhag, but do yourselves a favor. Tell your kids, or maybe an adult should supervise it. Write down where these 10 pieces of bread are. Daddy doesn't have to know. It could be your little secret, right? Don't lose these 10 pieces of bread, because if you do, you haven't done badikas chometz. So you got to start all over again until those 10 pieces of bread are found. Unless if it's less than a kazayas and your mom is stuck, then okay, you can rely on that. Now, people going away for Pesach. Right? I don't know if anyone here is going away for Pesach. Yeah. 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 Yes. But you have to make sure not to bring chametz into that office anymore. The bracha is only the night before. Yeah. So now, anyone going away for Pesach. So as we have said, anyone going away within 30 days of Pesach has to do bedikas chametz. Now, that is only if on Leil bedikas chametz, which is the 14th night of Nisan, his house belongs to him. If his house doesn't belong to him, then like anything that doesn't belong to you, you don't have to do bedikas chametz. So what people often do is they do something called a mechiras yud gimel. Instead of selling their chametz on the 14th of Nisan, they sell it on the 13th of Nisan, which means that when the chiyuv kicks in, which is the last night, to actually you have to do bedikas chametz now, it's not mine anymore. That's what is generally done. Mishnah Berurah says it could even be selling it on the 14th is also fine, because it could be there's no obligation to do bedikas chametz if I know with 100% certainty that my whole house is going to be sold by the time Pesach comes. So the shayla, people are machmir to do a mechira, to do a sale on the 13th. Now the ma'isa, biur chametz, as we just discussed, is a mitzvah. And therefore, even if you're going away for Pesach and you're selling your house, even if you're going to the fanciest, nicest, non-gebrocks, Hasidische Shrita hotel, there's still a mitzvah to do bedikas chametz and biur chametz. And therefore, what I would say is, even if you sell your house, keep one room in your house, or one area in your house which isn't sold. And therefore, the night before you leave to your hotel, to wherever, to the program, or to a different country, wherever you're going, you can fulfill the mitzvah of bedikas chametz on that room. Okay. Sorry? Again, you don't have to, but since it is a mitzvah, so the Mishnah Berurah does advise that you should, or the place can advise that you should at least keep one area of your house not sold so you can fulfill that mitzvah. But then you have to do a regular bedikas chametz. But as long as when Pesach comes in, that's interesting. Again, the chiyuv bedika is whoever owns the house on the 14th of Nisan, right? Which means if you're renting a house from somebody else only in the middle of Pesach, he's got the obligation to do bedikas chametz. Interesting. If it's a goy, you're renting a house off a goy in the middle of Pesach. Again, so there's no chiyuv on his house. Just make sure when you get there, there's no chametz lying around. And if it is chametz lying around, get rid of it, right? But there's no chiyuv bedika just because you know you're going into a house. You haven't got a chiyuv bedika when Pesach comes. Sorry. If hotel room you should do bedikas chametz. Why? Because you're renting that room. It's always on the renter. It's always whoever has the key to that place. He has to do bedikas chametz. Sorry. Yes, exactly. Yeah, correct. If you're renting, exactly. If it's a Jewish hotel owner and you're only renting the hotel room on the day of the 14th, he has to do bedikas chametz. Because when the chiyuv kicks in, it's always who owns that room at that point. That's who has to do bedikas chametz. This year it's slightly different, exactly, because this year really technically. So you're going to have to do bedikas chametz. But again, this year bedikas chametz tachatchila is the night before. So I would think you go by whenever bedikas chametz is. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. I have to look up. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't got time. Sorry. Yeah, go.
You go in there, there's a great thing that they cake or something for you. There's no Jewish hotel.
Yeah, I get it. What to do with chametz? What to do with chametz you find on Pesach? The din is you burn it. You burn it. You can flash it down a toilet as well. Flash down a toilet, or you burn it, but you have to on Yom Tov itself. We don't burn. We don't burn chametz found on Yom Tov. You cover it with a utensil. You cover it with a keli. Then on Chol HaMoed, you burn it, or you flash. You can flash down a toilet as well. Okay, just a couple more halachas. Again, chametz which you're planning on keeping until the next day for breakfast, right? Till the thing should be kept in a very safe place where kids can't get to. Because if you keep your chametz for breakfast lying around and you do bedikas chametz and your kids can access that and they're walking around with that, you haven't done bedikas chametz and you have to start again. So any food which you're planning on keeping, this is the whole day. You got to be very careful. Any chametz you're planning on keeping has to be in a designated place where kids can't get to. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. So we do our biur chametz on. No, so what we do this year, what we do, I'm going to give guidelines about this year anyway, at future stage. Exactly, we do bedikas chametz on Thursday night, we do biur chametz on Friday morning, and after we finish eating on Shabbos morning, we do bittul chametz. So we say I'm being mevatel any more chametz. That's what we do when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos. Now, after bedikas chametz, one should say I'm being mevatel, I'm getting rid of all my chametz besides what I want to keep for the next day, and it has to be. You have to understand what you are saying, right? So just to say it in the Lashon Arami, right, where you don't actually understand what you're doing, you're not being mevatel your chametz. Bittul means I'm saying I don't want this chametz anymore. You can say it in English if you want. There's no problem. But if you say it in Lashon Arami, use an art scroll. Just realize, understand what you're actually saying. Just a couple of quick halachas in regarding to biur chametz. So this is what we spoke about before, Daniel. We said, is there a mitzvah? The Minchas Chinuch discusses this shayla. There's a mitzvah of tashpisu sa'or mibatechem. Get rid of chametz before Pesach. Does that mean I've just got to make sure my house is chametz free? Or do I have an active mitzvah to go and burn chametz? Yeah, there are three ways of getting rid of chametz. Zori leruach, where I can throw it into the wind, I can throw it into the sea, or I can burn it. Well, much better to burn it. That's why I said better to burn it, but you can also flush down the toilet if you can't burn it. But we burn our chametz on Erev Pesach. Is there an active mitzvah to go and burn chametz? So that's a shayla. The Mishnah Berurah says ideally one should keep some chametz for the next day to burn, right? To be choshev for this opinion that one does have to actually actively burn chametz. You don't have to make your own fire. You can go to a neighbor's fire. You can go to somebody else's fire and burn your chametz, but you should try and keep some bit of chametz to burn. Now, this is interesting. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is an interesting kiddush. He says that when you're burning your chametz, so often people use like flammable liquids, make the fire burn faster. He says you shouldn't pour this flammable liquid on the bread or on the chametz before it's burnt. Why? Because once you pour the liquid, it becomes einu roya la'achilas kelev. So they didn't point out anything which is not edible for an animal to eat is not chametz. Again, anything which is not edible for an animal to eat, you can't eat it, but it's not chametz to own. Again, animal food is chametz, right? Anything which is not edible, even for an animal, is not chametz. And therefore, the problem is that when you're pouring this petroleum, this liquid, over the bread, you're making it, you're taking away it's thin of chametz, and therefore you're not actually fulfilling the mitzvah of biur chametz, which is what you are trying to do. Sorry? Yeah, you can use olive oil, exactly, it doesn't get ruined. Or you can just wait till it gets burned. And if you want to help burn it more, as long as it becomes einu roya la'achilas kelev, before you actually pour this liquid on it. Okay, any questions?
So this year we cannot burn. You've got
So we do on Friday. Yeah, Shabbos morning. Yeah.
You don't need to get rid of it.
Yes.
And it's more than say you can flash down. So what I've been told is complete chocolate, right? Which then makes it not fitting for an animal.
Not fitting for an animal, yeah.
If you then have it in a saying that the black pen on your pocket, is that then a problem? Because it's actually not.
That's an interesting shaila. So that it's a whole shaila about black bins. Does it belong to the council? Does it belong to you? Right? Is it your property? I'm going to write it in the guidelines. Yeah, if it's no longer chametz, if it's in roya la'achilas kelev, exactly, 100%. If it's not roya la'achilas kelev, if it's not possible for an animal to eat it, there's no problem to own it. They can keep it. They can definitely keep it in the bins. What you can also do, by the way, right? We have an eruv, so you can take the bread, crush it up into small pieces, not too small because it's high enough teichen, but put it in small pieces, put it on the street, and then the birds eat it. It's not your chametz anymore. So that's also fine.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no problem.
They're covered for the toy. The toy to be covered for. It'd be a question of self conscious. So that's how you should rely on husband or wife.
So the our place can say that nowadays, when everything is so well checked before Pesach, you can you don't have to literally check every pocket when doing Bdikas Chavos. You can rely on your wife and just check the general areas to see. Okay, next year will be next week, Thursday, Be'ez Hashem, about Seder night, tips and halachas. Yes. Sorry, how do I stop the recording? Sorry. Huh? Do I just leave? Just leave and finish? You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Serious, yeah. Every year. See you.